It's the first line day. We are exploring the lines of gate 25, the gate of innocence, the spirit of the self, and today the first line, which is called selflessness. So our first lines are the investigators, digging into the foundation of whatever really interests them in order to become an authority on it. There can be an insecurity in all first lines that they don't know enough. And this plays into the fear that is found in first lines. Fear is a keynote for all first lines. If you don't know enough, you may not be able to survive. The first line is linked to the splenic center, which we all know is about survival and safety. And a keynote that is often used for the first line is introspective. The lower trigram tends to be more focused inward, doing its own thing, studying, that kind of thing. And you might find that on a first line day, you are naturally drawn to researching something or learning something, and possibly not so much to the socializing side of life. Ra said that on a first line day, it was always a day of laying the foundation through research, through planning, and finding the ground and authority for this transit. If you decide to do something new or achieve something on a first line day, you may be less successful than in the second half of the cycle because the lower half of the hexagram is more self-absorbed. So you need to get accustomed to whatever transit you're going through in order to advance. The first line always gives you the foundation, and this first line in particular is something very profound. And when you get to its deepest levels, you really begin to recognize the nature of what universal love is all about. And the first line is called selflessness. Here we are in the self. The 25 is pointing towards the most dynamic willpower in the body, toward the deepest sense of ego power, because the will in the 51 is an enormous thing, and that will can be deeply possessive. I am the power, says the 51. And the 25 says, no, power exists. The 25 is selfless in the sense that it is not going to claim ego power. The 51 says, I am the jumper. And the 25 says, there is only the jump. There is no claim. There's no possessiveness here. It is not possible to possess the universe. As we have traveled through the lines of each gate, we have come across some that have a lifetime learning, or an introduction line, it's called, and there are some that don't. There's a big difference between lines that have an introduction and lines that don't. Where there is an introduction or a lifetime learning, it's telling us that the qualities of that line, whether it's the detriment or the exaltation, those qualities are not there from the beginning. The incarnation doesn't start off fully formed in a way. They have to be learned. When you have a line that has no introduction, then you are sort of immediately in the exaltation and the detriment. And this is material that is at work from the moment that you come into the world. It isn't necessarily something that you have to grow into. It's something that's automatically present. It's automatically active in you. And whenever you see an introduction to a line, it's saying that the way in which the genetics operate is that the line matures over time. And in most cases, the potential of that line is reached maybe at midlife point. Every line in the gate 25 has an introduction line. So unconditional love and innocence are something that we come to. It says, as a lifetime learning here in the first line, motiveless action. So it means that most of this motiveless action is not there from the beginning. So if you have a child who has the 25-1, they're not going to come in with this motiveless action. It is something that will develop over the course of the lifetime. It's something that has to be learned in the life. It has to be grasped. And there are two ways in which that can be approached, the this and the that, the exaltation and the detriment. We are all conditioned to be motivated, all of us. We're conditioned to have a motive in whatever we do. If you do this, you get that. It's often how we're controlled as children, after all. If you stop crying, I'll give you an ice cream. Well, it could be something very simple. Could be a lot more profound than that. If you go and study this course, I'll buy you a motorbike, then you can go off around the world. It could be anything. But we are conditioned to be controlled through motive and motivation. The exaltation says the universalization of activity, psychic attunement that is its own reward, the potential for centering through attunement to challenges. To be motiveless is the core of what it is to be centered. The first line is always giving us the foundation, and this is the foundation of being centered, which is really just being attuned to what is. We can't automatically be attuned. It's something we develop. It's something that grows in our process. Human design is designed for children. It's designed as a basic education program. Although more often, we don't find it until a little bit older. It hasn't been in the world that long, of course. But it is children who are really going to have the chance to mature into these introduction lines with the guidance that we can provide. We kind of rock up into human design, and many of us are straight into the kind of older or more mature expression of an introduction line, but without having had the benefit of the guidance of the line as it unfolds. In the detriment, a tendency to publicize one's selflessness, the insecurity of the self manifested in times of challenge. The insecurity of the self manifested in times of challenge. It's very productive for us. We live in an era where the self is insecure. And we live in a first line global soup. So this is something that is playing out through all of us. And the 25 is one of the keys. No, it's not. It's one of the locks. It's one of the locks in the background frequency. We always have the 25 in one of its expressions of one of the lines through the whole of the existence that we've been here, as far as we know, and certainly up until the end of the round. So we are all, in a way, experiencing the power of this selflessness, but also the insecurity of the self. So there's an enormous movement throughout the world of people who are trying to secure their identity. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? Is there a motive? Is there a God? Is it only God that can be great? What am I here to do? All of these things, and you could trawl the internet. You don't have to trawl far on the internet, and there's a plethora of books, of courses, of retreats, of this, of that, and giving you guidance as to who you are. And you can see that in the detriment, there is one of the keys to the revival of fundamentalism and the theocracies in the world. This lack of identity being imprinted by old religious symbols onto people. The insecurity of the self manifested in times of challenge. Challenge is a keynote for the channel. The competitiveness that lies in initiation always has to deal with the challenge of the ego that must be met. What happens here in the challenge from the ego is that the selflessness is there, but it always has to be expressed because there is uncertainty about the quality of the identity. In other words, the identity is not strong enough to be silently motiveless. The identity has to be able to stand up and say, hey, look at what I've done. Aren't I terrific? Hey, I wonder if one day they'll make me a saint. Now, this is what this detriment is saying. And it's lower trigram. So it doesn't know that the 51 is at the other end of the channel and its power is there. And it can obviously be quite shocking to meet that. And the spirit of the self is always challenged by that shock. So the first thing to recognize is that we live in a time in which the global identity is very weak because this is the foundation of the self in our era. The first line is always trying to figure out what love and innocence really are. And that's a tough job. There's a basic insecurity in that. And because it's a learning process, it's a lifetime learning process, there really is an insecurity in that. It takes a while to reach that point where you can feel that you're an authority in it. It's more a case of in the beginning of the life, maybe I'm being selfless, I'm being motiveless. Can't you see that? Where's my reward for my motiveless action? It's an ongoing process until it's not, until that point is grasped. As we move through the line structure of the hexagram, when we're looking at the lower trigram, the first 3 lines, we are dealing with an internalized process. The 25 one doesn't know there's a 51 on this other side, and it's going to surprise the hell out of it because they're always busy looking inward, trying to see what love is. So the grounding for the sun as it transits through gate 25 is the earth in gate 46. And the first line is called Being Discovered. Dedication in obscurity that is unexpectedly discovered. This is the whole secret of what this hexagram is all about. Every other place in the abstract process is loaded with expectation. If I do this, I'll get that. Yeah, this is what we've been finding as well in the 25-1, the motiveless action. The 46 is saying, just be in the experience for the sake of the experience, and only then will it be productive. Only then will you find out the point of it. Later, afterwards, you can look back, you can reflect, and then maybe you'll see what it was all about. You know, through seeing what you've been through. Because if you stop in the middle of an experience, you break the flow. You break the continuity and you lose the value. And you don't have a chance to reflect on what you've done and learn the lessons of it. Dedication in obscurity could be something that supports the motiveless action of the 25-1. You know, that lifetime learning of selflessness. So the moon is currently in gate 44, the splenic gate of alertness. It's been there since 2259, and it begins its individual journey now, beginning with gate 1 at 1024. This is the creative, the gate of self-expression. This is the energy potential to manifest inspiration without limitation. The drive to express ourselves in unique and creative ways with the ability to focus on the creative process without concern for outside opinion. A dominant theme is the deep need to express unique and authentic individuality, rooted in direction. The first gate is very much a gate of direction. And it doesn't want to be bothered by the rules of the collective, not in individuality. These new ways of expression it can bring can have great impact, could inspire others to take a new direction for themselves. People with this gate need to interact with those who recognize their potential. It's a projector gate. And they may feel very attracted to people with gate 8 who can help them to exteriorize their work and help them make a contribution through their self-expression. When they're collaborating in this way, they can become a role model. They can impact the collective with the manifestation of their creative work. Next, we have gate 43 in the Ajna at 2149, the gate of breakthrough and insight. This is a gate of unique perception that is the result of sudden bursts of insight, pulses of insight, and a constant process of structuring these insights so they can be formulated as concepts that bring radically new knowledge into the world. Uranus is in gate 23, so we have the channel of structuring while the moon is here, and that can help to mitigate the difficulty gate 43 sometimes has in being understood when it doesn't have a 23 to speak through. The channel brings the potential for expression through recognition and invitation. It also brings the courage and the resolve to stand behind its own knowing. This channel can be very deaf. It can be a very difficult channel to teach because it wants to have its own knowing. And so it often has difficulty listening to others, which is a genetic predisposition to protect itself from unwanted outside influences rather than trying to be difficult for the sake of it. And the final moon gate today is gate 14 at 0911. And that's tomorrow morning, actually. And it's the sacral gate of possession in great measure, the gate of power skills. And this is a deeply material gate that supplies the entire energy for the material way. This is about having access to resources and material wealth and the power and skill to distribute and direct resources in a way that supports humanity's need for change and mutation. In order to survive as a species, we need this. We need to be able to change and mutate, but we need to have the resources to help us get through that process. So inherent here is a power to follow our own unique direction in life, which ultimately will benefit the direction of the whole. Escape empowers those who carry it, as well as others, towards investing resources in keeping that pace of humanity going forwards, evolving and expanding. So that's the first gate of, no, it's the first line of gate 25. And so, yeah, we're off on this journey through the last of my gate explorations. And until tomorrow, when we look at the second line, yeah, enjoy your day, your evening, your unconditional love, your innocence. There's so much in gate 25. It's so rich. And of course, we're coming up to that point of the so, solstice. Is it the solstice? It's the equinox, isn't it? No, it's the solstice. Oh, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to have a cup of tea. I'll see you later. I'll find out what it is and get back to you. But the 25 is it's March. So that's an equinox. No, that's a solstice. It's an equinox. Got there eventually. Yeah, the equinox in the end of March. We're coming there, and that's what gate 25 symbolizes. And all the gates in the G center, in the love, the vessel of love, they have a correlation either to the equinoxes or the solstices. So we find them around the wheel, marking that time. So before we had calendars and watches and phones to tell us what date and time it was, we would look at the sun and we would look at how it was doing in the sky. And so coming up to this point, this was also considered, it wasn't the start of spring, which is what we call it now. Or was it? See, I don't have many first lines. I'm really, my authority on this is, yes, anyway. So we would have at one point, I will say this because I choose to have this knowledge. Let me think what I'm trying to say to you. It's about where we are in the season. Because when I heard this, I was like, that can't be true. But we were actually going into, it's like the middle of winter when we move into this point of the year. And a lot of people say, oh, it's the beginning of spring. Maybe it, no, maybe it is now because things have changed and we know that winters tend to be slightly different. We don't get anything like the snow we used to have when I was younger, and things have changed in that respect. But it used to be that this was considered the middle time of winter. And now I look at the window and I can see the birds are nesting over in the our neighbours' guttering. We have some starlings there who nest there every year, and the trees are starting to green up, and so really it is more spring-like for us now. So my wittering, I'm going now. I'll see you tomorrow for the second line.